strange and artificial time to be growing up. Grew up in a sort of upper middle class family. My father was a successful businessman. So in some ways we were privileged, and it's the that old moniker, it was real white privilege.
All right.
Really, in those days, by law, not by by sort of chance of birth, really. But it was, I would say, in all ways, it's shaped how I've become today. My parents were hands-on, they were there, they were interested and involved in their 3 kids as we grew up. Even though my father was away a lot, working very hard, he very rarely missed a football match or a cricket match. So I think we were quite lucky, as I say, on the one hand. On the other hand, I think it shaped many of my values as they are today because of the atrocities, because of the unfair way that the vast majority of people were treated. I come from a liberal family, and we did our bit in the struggle. I would say my father was very much a supporter of the local township business people and provided much needed support to them when banks, bank credit, commercial contracts were not there for them. So I think he did more than most did. But the real heartbeat of our family was my late uncle, who was a Catholic priest in Cape Town, in the slums of Gugulethu. And if any of the listeners have driven from the airport in Cape Town into town, before you get to the beautiful foreshore and the multi-million rand mansions, you go through the slums of Khayelitsha and Gugulethu, where people live cheek and jowl and have very little. And he actually was the Catholic priest in that area.
Yeah.
He was offered a very plush area in Rondebosch in the southern suburbs as his parish, and he turned that down and chose to do real work. And he was the heartbeat of our family, and he was constantly on us about doing our bit. Are you doing enough? Are you thinking about it, etc.? So I think he was the guy that shaped my my values as they were to emerge down the line.
Yeah, you said you grew up and you come from a liberal family and everything, but you were privileged because you're from a white South African grouping.
Yeah.
What I want you to tell us is that most Ghanaians do not know that South Africa is a very big country, and you have different, the areas, and if you can give me a little insight into, because we know about Cape Town, and you've talked about Pretoria, and then we have all have heard about Johannesburg and maybe Durban. So explain to me the lay of the land in South Africa before we continue with our...
Yeah, the geography is as diverse as our people.
Right.
The late Madiba coined the phrase the Rainbow Nation.
Right.
And we really are a true Rainbow Nation in terms of all the different tribes.
Yeah.
11 different official languages. But geographically, yes, where I come from on the Highveld is very high above sea level. It's inland, it's up north.
Yeah.
Moving towards the border of Zimbabwe. It's a very good agricultural area. Maize, cattle, and crops, and lots of citrus in that area. And the farms in that, well, in all of South Africa, the farms are huge commercial farms. unlike the smaller farms that we have here in Ghana, massive industrial size farms, and probably the best farmers on the continent still. Over 120 years later, the old-fashioned cooperatives, as they were at the time, formed in each area crops that were suitable to an area.
Right.
And then a business was developed to support all of these farmers. And that remains the bedrock of our agricultural industry today. But up north, apart from agriculture, the wildlife safaris, which are very popular for international tourists.
Yeah.
We've got the world-renowned Kruger National Park, which many African visitors to South Africa go to. It's wonderful to take the family for 3 to 5 days. It's wonderful. But there are also a lot of smaller private game reserves which offer bespoke type of safaris. You can walk, you can go on horseback, you can go on helicopter, you can go on hot air balloons, all viewing wild animals. Dangerous wild animals, I might add. I mean, walking in the bush it's not a stroll in the park, as it were. You know, you've got lions, you've got leopards, you've got rhino, buffalo, which they tend to be a bit dangerous. So you've got to be a bit careful. So the safaris in the north of the country are world-renowned.
Right.
And the tourist sector is a big employer of people and is flourishing. The sadness there, though, we've all read about the poaching, and especially poaching of rhinos.
Right.
The rhinoceros horn is, especially in the Far East, it's used for medicinal purposes.
Aphrodisiac.
Yes, yeah. And I'm not sure that it actually works. But sadly, the animals have been slaughtered in their thousands, which is terrible. So there's the agriculture and safari up north. You then come to the heartland of industrial South Africa, which is Johannesburg. And if we go back in contemporary history, gold was found on the Witwatersrand in the early 1900s. Yeah. So there was a gold rush there. That was just after the diamond rush in the late 1800s in Kimberley. And I think a lot of those that read history might have read about the big hole in Kimberley.
That's right.
The open pit mines in the late 1800s. And that's where the first settlers from Europe made their fortunes in South Africa. Although they landed in the Cape of Good Hope in the 1650s, the Dutch, led by Jan van Riebeeck, it was the first real wealth really came with the discovery of diamonds in the early 1800s. And again, in contemporary history, Cecil John Rhodes, the British politician and adventurer, was the one that industrialized, organized, and brought about real structure to the diamond industry, which was sort of a haphazard, higgledy-piggledy approach of wildcatters in that time. So in the Witwatersrand, the whole backbone of the Johannesburg area is built on the discovery of gold. And there are still active gold mines in that area, but fewer and fewer these days, and a lot of them are very deep underground. Unlike here in Ghana, where most of the mining is open cast, there they can go a couple of kilometers underground. So it's quite dangerous and very expensive. So the Witwatersrand has been the heartbeat of industrial South Africa. There's lots of manufacturing around there. It's the financial capital of South Africa. Sandton is the Wall Street of South Africa. It's where the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is, and all the big banks have their headquarters. And that remains a powerhouse.
You haven't talked about Durban and Cape Town.
Yes, so I'll leave Cape Town for last because it's really special.
Okay.
Then moving down the N4 motorway from Johannesburg to Durban, that's the KwaZulu-Natal coast.
Right.
And that's, from a weather point of view, that's more like Ghana. It's hot and humid most of the time. And I'd say it's more lush jungle type, subtropical. There used to be big sugarcane farms in that area, massive sugarcane farms, which over time have become new cities, new townships, etc.
What did they do with the sugar cane? Was it for alcohol or for sugar?
Well, both. So it would be refined for sugar, and then of course the byproducts from that are alcohol being one of the main ones, and ethanol and products like that. But unfortunately, like a lot of industries, you can probably import the sugar much cheaper from other countries than producing it locally. So over the decades, the sugar industry's ability to stand alone sort of fell away. And they still do quite a bit of sugar, but not like they used to at its peak.
Was it for local consumption or for export?
Certainly export. Of course, it satisfied most of the local consumption, but a lot of South African production still is for export. We've got some wonderful South African brands, whether it's canned food, whether it's beer, whether it's wine, or commodities such as sugar, is certainly exported into Africa and the the SADC region. So the KwaZulu-Natal coast is beautiful. It's a rugged coastline. It's the Indian Ocean, so it's the warm ocean, and which is quite different shoreline from the west coast of South Africa, which is the Atlantic seaboard.
Right.
So KwaZulu-Natal, the further up north you go, you then approach the Mozambique border. And it's this wild jungle, which is spectacular in its natural beauty. There's a lot of offshore underwater diving. It's a very popular destination for scuba diving. So there are lots of tourist resorts there. There's lots of schools where you learn to scuba dive. You get licensed there, etc. Lots of big hotel resorts, big golf course residential golf courses, really world class. So Durban itself is the old inner city, much like maybe the high street here in Accra. And then over time, the suburbs coming this way towards East Legon and further out have become more modern parts of Durban. And that is very much what's happened in Durban. The old Durban city centre is still there. It's a little bit decayed, but down at the hill. But the further up north you go, Umhlanga, Umhloti, etc., these are beautiful new townships for the middle to upper class.
I see. Well, you've given us a little background to the lay of the land of South Africa. Let's get back to your family. So you went to school where? I know that you went to a Catholic school or something like that, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but tell us about growing up. I mean, the actual growing up, some of the experiences you had.
Yeah, sure. If I can go back to the beginning of the Weber family in Africa. So I'm fifth generation African. But the Weber family arrived in Port Elizabeth. That's the east coast of South Africa. It's now called Gqeberha, in 1837.
Okay.
And William Weber was a ship's captain. And in fact, if you go to that Eastern Cape area today, Grahamstown, Port Elizabeth, etc., there are still many Webers to be found in that area. And historians and the various books that we've got show that the English settlers, many of them arrived on that part of the coast after the 1820 settlers. So we arrived, my family, in 1837. And they eventually found their way up to the Witwatersrand and then Pretoria, where I was born. So fifth generation. My dad, my grandfather, has a fascinating and has had an impact on my life, although he died before I met him. But posthumously, I've learned so much about the man. He was a medical doctor and was the district surgeon in the Kruger National Park area, in a small town called Kamatiport, which Ghanaians probably, it wouldn't mean anything to a Ghanaian, but to us the Kamati Accord was signed, and in contemporary history is very important, and that was very close to the end of the war.
The Boer War?
No, our more recent terrible apartheid
war.
So the Kamati Accord, and so it has historical significance. And it was really the beginning of the end of the Boer regime, more latterly. And he, as I say, was had an interesting role there as a medical doctor. And at that time, like here, there were leper colonies, and the lepers were put in conclaves which were out of human contact. And there was a very big leper colony in the Kruger Park. And my late grandfather had his own rail carriage, and one of his duties was to take care of this leper colony in the Kruger Park. But my dad speaks about his early days as a 5, 6, 7-year-old going with his dad through the Kruger Park, the rail carriage having to stop because there were lions, leopards, elephants on the railway line.
Really?
Yes. And he was sent away to boarding school when he was 6 years old on his own. He was put on the train with his tuck box, 5 years old, 6 years old, and sent to Kimberley, to the Christian Brothers College school in Kimberley, which at the time was arguably one of the best schools in South Africa. The Irish brothers the crazy Irish brothers were sent over from Dublin to beat the living hell out of us youngsters in South Africa. So my dad enjoyed so much the Christian Brothers College culture in Kimberley. He then went to Pretoria CBC for his secondary school. So when it was time for us to go to secondary school, it was the CBC in Pretoria, a small private school. Although it's a private school, it by no means was it elite. It served the Catholic community at the time, lots of Portuguese, Italian immigrants to South Africa who were all working class. So there was very little elite about it, although it was a private school. So that was an interesting time. It was rough. When I say that the Christian Brothers beat the hell out of us, literally they did. They were madmen. But Fritz, I have to tell you, to a man, we loved these guys like you can't believe. As crazy as they were, it was their life. It was a vocation. It's what they did. And what the values they taught us were incredible. Not all of it did our parents get to hear about it at the time because it was dreadful. I'll give you some examples. They loved, if you played sport, if you were in the band, and you did your homework, you did your bit, you were fine. But if you shirked your responsibilities, they had no time for you. And they encouraged peer review. So if a guy was caught smoking or having a beer outside, and he was a guy that didn't play in the rugby team or the football team or didn't do well at school, they encouraged sort of group beatings.
What do you mean by group beatings?
Quite literally that. They would say, he's not coming into my office because if he comes into my office, I'm going to, he'll be kicked out of the school.
Right.
So we encourage you to go and have a discussion with him.
All right.
And by that, a nod and a wink, it was,
Thrash him.
And don't bring it back to
All
my
right.
door.
Let's hold that thought. What was the first song that you chose for this program?
Bright Blue,
Yeah.
Window on the World.
All right. Bright Blue, Window on the World. And that is the first selection by my guest on I Have a Story to Tell on 101.9 FM ZFM. My guest is Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Tell me about Bright Blue before we go back to your story. Who are Bright Blue? I've never heard of them.
South African band. And I discovered music as a teenager. I'm sure most of us around the world do.
Right.
And I loved music. And at that time, Bright Blue, it was the early 80s.
Okay.
It was, if you listen to some of the lyrics, he talks about young men marching everywhere, trying their best to escape. It's, we all had to do national service as white males.
Right.
2 years. That was sort of still at the height of the struggle. And so that was kind of an end conscription campaign anthem. So there were many of us who went to the army, although we didn't want to. You had to. It was your duty. But we went with, it was a moral dilemma. So the music on the one hand is very nice. It's got a nice beat to it.
Right.
But the I think what it represents for me and for many of us at that time in South Africa was it was a sort of an anti-establishment.
A protest song, yeah.
A protest song, yes, absolutely. So it's a Cape Town band, and it takes me back to the early 80s.
I see. Okay, so you went to the CBC and you were talking about group beatings, which I don't find strange because most of our schools here are very strict and thrashings were done by the teachers and not by the students. So that's a departure. And so after CBC, what did you do?
So before I went to the army for my national service,
Right.
I then went to the University of Cape Town to read economics.
Right.
And it was a blur, 3 years. I'm not sure how much I learned, to be honest. So my father often said he feels that the money spent on my education there might have been wasted. But nevertheless, economics, I mean, UCT is still a world-class institution today.
Right.
But at the time, again, I think a lot of our time was taken up with debate. around what was going on in the country
Right.
at the
I
time.
want to come down to that. Apartheid. You lived through it, and from where you were coming from, naturally, that's where the liberal part of South Africa came from, the English as against the Boer. And I'm not saying anything negative about Boers per se, but apartheid was a horror story for a lot of us, especially my generation growing up. I mean, it was one of the things that we abhorred and fought against and railed against. But you were telling us about it. How did you cope with that? Being from a liberal part of that society, how did it go, and what were your thoughts on apartheid, and how did it impact on you?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the show, Fritz, on the one hand, coming from a privileged environment, it was compartmentalized. So there were long periods of time where it had no impact on my life, sadly. I could go about my life in the middle class suburbs, and you could be anywhere in the world, and there was no issue. But it was when we were on a platform, say at the university, especially in Cape Town. They called it Moscow on the Hill at the time, because on a Friday, the best sport for us was Friday after lunch. We would go out and throw bricks and stones at the police cars that used to come and barricade the road up to the Duval Drive up to the university, and chase us around, by the way, with their dogs. And it was quite dangerous. So it depended on where the time of day and the time of the year.
Was it segregated, Cape Town University?
Yeah. Cape Town, yes, it was still segregated.
Right.
But when I was there from 85 for 3 years, it was becoming more multicultural. But it was still predominantly white at that time. So growing up in that era, everything was segregated, everything was artificial. And it really just depended. Some of my friends were very active. They were in student politics and went on into mainstream politics, after the struggle when democracy prevailed after the 92 referendum.
Yes.
And then the 94 election. Some of them found their way into mainstream politics and did quite well. They had good careers. So it was, I think when I look back, we always think, well, we did a bit, but we should have really done a lot more with the resources we had at our disposal, sadly.
Yeah. Now, apartheid was something that was found abhorrent worldwide. And then all of a sudden, the curtain opened and or the barriers fell, and you had a new world. Was it a culture shock for you when apartheid fell? And how did you cope with that?
No. In fact, it was natural. I think the build-up had been coming, so it wasn't a shock to anyone. I think the sanctions, the economic sanctions that were brought to bear by the global...
How did you feel about that? How did South Africans, white South Africans, cope with the sanctions? Naturally, it affected everybody, including the black South Africans. But how did the white South Africans cope with that? Because it must have made a dent in their entitlement and all that.
Yeah, I think it's like any environment. If you have money and resources, you are less affected. But the company was essentially bankrupted over a decade or so of sanctions. Ironically, though, Fritz, it made some of our industries very strong and robust. We had to be self-reliant. One example was our arms industry, armored vehicles, helicopters, guns, weapons, etc. We were of the best in the world in the various categories at the time. Our farming community especially was world class, so we could produce just about all of our own food. Our railway system, our industrial base was good. But the banking sector itself was just hollowed out, and there was no money to finance things. So was it a culture shock? No. I think there was a sense of relief from the more conservative whites. They knew it had to happen. It was relatively peaceful. I mean, tens of thousands of people lost their lives over the course of the struggle, so it was certainly not bloodless.
Yeah.
But it could have been a lot worse. I think people like Madiba, Nelson Mandela, made sure that there was no uprising as such. So it was actually this calm, inevitable, beautiful thing which happened. And it was, at the time and for a decade or so afterwards, it was really written about by scholars and rejoiced around the world at how democracy could actually work. It's a different story today, of course, but certainly then it was a miracle.
Right. You said you were privileged. What sort of interaction did you have with black people when you were young? Did you have any friends who were black, or what kind of relationship did you have with them? Because I know that naturally there were strictures that would prevent you from actually embracing it wholeheartedly. But what experiences did you have?
Yeah, it was
with
very limited because of the segregation. Luckily for us at CBC, we had a lot of black kids there.
Really?
The diplomats from Africa who had their embassies in Pretoria, just about all of them sent their kids to CBC, and that was allowed. So there you could have black and white kids together. And we were in Pretoria probably the only school like that. For the girls, it would have been the convent as well, the equivalent of the boys' school. So I had a few black friends, and one of my very good friends, I still remember his name today, Austin Machinjili. His father was the ambassador from Malawi. And we played rugby together, and in the under 15 year, so that I was standard 8, we were playing against these big Afrikaners in the Administrators' Cup. And this is a fascinating story.
Yeah.
So I love Austin to this day. We were playing in this league, and we got beaten up on a weekly basis. These guys were just so much bigger than us, and they took delight in thrashing us, points-wise and physically. But anyway, we're playing in this match, and suddenly the game comes to a grinding halt. The referee calls it to a stop. And we see our headmaster on the side of the field talking to their headmaster. Their hands are waving in the air. I can see our headmaster's face getting redder and redder, this Irishman from Dublin. And the whistles go, and all of us are called off the field. Match abandoned.
Right.
Why? Apparently they saw young Austin in our team playing, and the opposition headmaster said to ours, if you quietly take the black boy off the field, we won't say anything. Just replace him with a white kid, and the games can continue. And our headmaster said, thank you very much for that. All the games are off, abandoned. And to my delight, I love Austin to this day. We pulled out of the league, and it was the end of getting beaten up on a weekly basis. So it was, but it's a serious thing. And in fact, the next week, our headmaster flew to Washington. It was headlines in all the papers. And it was around about that time, I'm diverging a bit from your question about black friends, but it was exactly at that time that my uncle, who was the Catholic priest, went to America to Notre Dame University, the Fighting Irish, the Catholic university, and went on a hunger strike, which lasted 40 days.
Really?
40 days. And if you remember the IRA terrorist,
that's right.
Bobby Sands lasted 66 days and died. So Basil, my uncle, lasted 40 days protesting the removal of black families in Cape Town in District 6. So that's a very, very famous South African period. It's a blot on our copybook. It's terrible, but it was an integrated community in Cape Town. Blacks and whites and coloreds living side by side. One day the bulldozers came in and people were forcibly removed, families. And they're still to this day fighting to get their land back. But he went on this hunger strike in the mid-'80s, same time, early 80s. And so it's at that time when I was 15 years old that, although I knew what this apartheid thing was, it was the first time that it came home to me, one on the sports field, a fun thing. I was happy not to be beaten up by some bigger kids. But then with my uncle going on this hunger strike and me realizing, actually, you know what, this is a serious thing. It's we need to understand more about this. So, yeah, we had some black friends, luckily, at CBC. But other than that, you know, my nanny that brought me up was a black lady who couldn't read and write, Paulina. She's in her old age now. We still take care of her. She's a wonderful woman, a second mother to me. And we had our driver, Peter Weber, he was called, who drove us around. We're still in touch and we take care of him. So we were lucky to have decent black folk around us who treated us decently, with love, and we lived together. But I was lucky to have a few friends at school, yes.
Super. This is I Have a Story to Tell on Zed FM 101.9. My name is Fritz Baffor. My guest today is Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa. He's the president of the Ghana-South Africa Business Chamber. He lives in Ghana, and we'll come down to that. But right now he's telling us about his early days in South Africa and some of the experiences he had in Ghana. For a long time, when he mentioned South Africa, it was not, it was done with the jaundiced eye. But right now, we're very, very close to South Africa in a lot of things that we do. And so it's great to have Grant here on the program telling us about the bad old days. So, Grant, we played Bright Blue. What's the next song that you have for us?
I actually can't remember.
Betty Higgins.
Oh, Bertie Higgins.
Bertie
yes.
Higgins.
Yeah,
Okay.
Key Largo, yes.
Okay.
So the same era of the early 80s.
Yes.
But I think it might have been when I fell in love for the first time, Fritz.
All right, we'll tell us about that after the music.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Bertie Higgins, and that is another song selected by my guest, Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa. And he's been telling us about his years, early years in South Africa, growing up, the experiences in his secondary school and going to university. He's come right up to the time that he first fell in love. I know if it isn't too salacious, tell us about it.
Wow. I've just got a smile on my face, I tell you. You know, I had my priorities as a teenager, and my priorities were crystal clear.
Yeah.
It was girls, and then music and sport. Yeah, more or less like that.
Right.
And I think for a lot of teenagers, I mean, that's how it is. And we were lucky in Pretoria. I think still for those that have been to Pretoria today, it's a wonderful city. It really is nice. So growing up there in the suburbs really was nice.
What kind of fun did you have? Do you have parties and discos and things like that?
We did that. And I think we played a lot of sport with all the different schools in the district. So we had and we were buddies with everyone really through the sport. So every weekend we could get invited to parties all over the city, and it was really nice. Although it's not a big city, and at the time I think it was probably 700,000 people. So you could, in the schools we mixed with, we pretty much knew everyone. So parties, listening to music, hanging out. And of course, sport for South Africans still is a big part of our lives.
Right.
Especially then, growing up. We played all sports. We were very competitive. So I think if you were quite good at sports, you know, the girls always used to come and watch. And, you know, the better you played, the better your chances were that night at the disco, I guess.
Right.
So there was always that extra incentive to play well on the field.
Now, with the embargo on sending things to South Africa, how did you cope with the cultural influences that came from Europe? Because the two songs that I've listened that you selected were very much like British pop, you know, of the 70s and the 80s. The boycott of South African goods and things like that, did it affect the cultural life? Because you're saying things were good. I mean, you could go to discos and dance and all that.
Well, you spent time in London more or less in that era. I'm trying to
from
think.
The 70s,
yes, I'm trying. So the musicians and film artists.
Yes.
I forget the name of their union, but they banned their music and films coming to South Africa.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember the union that they called.
Well, it'll come to me.
Yeah, it'll come.
Yeah.
But in that time, we had very little access to the music of the day. And many of the British comedy was at its peak.
Equity is the name of it.
Equity, exactly right. So Equity banned sale of their materials in South Africa. So much of the music that we had to smuggle it in. If my dad went to London on business, we'd give him a list of 5 cassette tapes to buy and bring back, as an example. But the all of the comedy of that era, which is absolutely at its peak, we had no access to it at all.
I see. And I must say that you have to tell Ghanaians that at that time there was no television. You know, television came very late to South Africa.
1978, if I remember.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Maybe 77, we got TV. But it was technically TV.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we could watch, I think there was 2 hours a night. And it wasn't the best. And it was more government propaganda than anything else, quite frankly. But yes, so Equity was interesting in that time. So British music, we really struggled to get our hands on. It couldn't be played on the commercial radios. So whenever you could get a cassette or a record in those days, they were gold. But like I say, I think the South African industrial base was very strong and resilient and became stronger. So if you wanted a motor car, you could get a motor car easily enough. There was fuel to put in the tank. There was no problem. You could get the tires. There was always food in the supermarkets. So it didn't seem to impact us at that level, quite frankly. But it was at the higher level where the corporates and the government was bankrupted. You know, there was just no money for them to invest in anything of importance. So I think the big play was at that much higher level where the bankruptcy came.
But did it lead to a decay in the infrastructure, bad roads and things like that?
No, ironically not, because the government of the day, the evil apartheid regime, actually did very well in service delivery if you were in a white area.
Oh, I see.
Only the white area.
Okay.
But then, yes, if you were outside of our areas, the privileged areas, there was very little to nothing. So the schools were incredibly bad, deliberately, of course. The clinics and hospitals, bad, very basic. The road system, very bad. Transport was good, only because mass transport was needed to bring people in to work.
Yes.
Otherwise, they would have made sure that that was not good. So no, I think in terms of suffering through the embargo of goods, no, not at that level, but it was at government level where they were throttled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grant, so let's leave the apartheid era and go into the new era, the new horizon of Madiba post-apartheid. What was the journey like from when Madiba was freed, and how did you cope with the new things that were coming in? As I told you, I asked you about culture shock, and you said it wasn't too much, but tell me about those years, the post-Madiba years, because Ghanaians would love to hear about
the golden years, really. I think, let's say a decade, maybe a bit longer, 15 years, but certainly the 10 years from 94 were golden years for us, which culminated in us, well, we won the Rugby World Cup, if you remember, in 95.
Yes.
Which was more than symbolic. And there's always that picture of the captain, Francois Pena, holding the cup up with Madiba, wearing his number 6 jersey, which is still iconic. No, everything was harmonious, it was natural, it was embraced. There was no pushback from anyone. I think it worked well, because it was inevitable. It had to happen. And I think because of the leadership of people like Mandela and those around him, everything that was good of a transformation of society that could happen, did happen. So that, as a young guy, then working in my first few jobs, it was great. We had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which in fact a young Cyril Ramaphosa was one of the key players, he's now our president many years later. And that was an exercise in leadership, in forgiveness, tolerance. I'd never fully understood the power of that platform that was used, but it was so powerful. So those were good times, Fritz, and as a young contributing, hard-working guy.
What were you doing then? I mean, you'd finished university.
Yeah.
This new development had come into place in terms of the social dynamics, and so what were you doing?
I had completed my national service as well.
Right.
So don't forget, after university, I was still obliged to go and do my 2 years of national service, which I did. But luckily, the war was essentially over then, so we didn't do anything.
If I may interject, the war, did it affect you? Did it affect your community? Because naturally, they said people were terrorists, they were coming in and all that kind of thing. But did it impact on you, your society? Personally, did you have any attacks or any threats? What was the security situation like before we move back to the golden years?
No, I think where we were in cities, in the cities, the suburban areas, no, we were fine. All of the fighting and skirmishes have tended to be on our borders, or in fact outside of our borders. The South African military at that time had offenses, real offensive tactics into
Angola, Mozambique.
Yes, especially in Angola in those days, but into Zimbabwe, into Botswana, into Namibia as it's known now, Southwest Africa then, Zambia, Mozambique, even up to Tanzania. If you read any of the books written on the war, there were clandestine and open warfare. So I think a lot of the fighting was done on our border, or in fact in the countries around us. So the front line was far removed from the cities. So we weren't impacted directly. But quite a few of my friends who went to the army directly from school, so elected to do that before going to university, were up on the border and were cannon fodder as such. You know, they couldn't become officers because they hadn't been to university. So they were in the field. And they fought. They were on the front lines and they were in battles. But as I say, when I came there 4 or 5 years later, I wasn't forced to be up on the border. So the golden years were that. They were good. The economy.
So what were you doing?
So I joined the family business. As I said earlier in the show, my father was a successful businessman, and mostly in logistics, warehousing and transport. And that's where I cut my teeth, learned the business from the ground up. So we were my dad was one of the pioneers in modern logistics in South Africa. So we had big fleets of trucks, big warehouses, we did distribution. So that was an interesting time.
And did the floodgates open in terms of trade as soon as the embargo was lifted?
They did, yeah.
What was the impact on South Africa, really?
We were the darling of the world. I think everyone we were open for business. The banks were recapitalized. The gold mines were booming. The diamond mines were booming. So there was employment. There was money pouring into schools for all, clinics for all. So yes, and there was just this joie de vivre felt throughout the country. Everyone felt a part of it, and no one was excluded. And I think that's, as I said, it comes down to real leadership on a human level there, nothing else. So bold. We were lucky. So for those 10 years, it was a good time to be a South African in South Africa.
All right. So you worked in the family business. You were becoming a man of your own, right? Then after the 10 years, what happened? What went wrong?
Yeah, probably 15 years. I think reality set in. The ANC, which was the liberating party, has a manifesto, has its things that it strives for. And if you read it today, it still holds. But the people change. And those early leaders, many of them were elderly then, or if they weren't elderly, were quite sick. They had been through a rough time. Some of them had been in exile up here, as you know, Fritz.
Yes.
It tended to be the intelligentsia, or mostly the musicians here, who were up here. But it was more the fighting folk who were on the east coast of Africa, I think more Tanzania.
Yeah.
And some of them came through pretty tough times, so they weren't necessarily old, but their bodies just gave out young. So that whole era passed on in that 10 to 15 years. And there was that real moral leadership and that fiber that was there. And then I think your next crew that come through are different. And each subsequent generation that has come through is more and more distant from their fathers and grandfathers who won the war. And they don't have any real understanding and feel for what happened. And so times change, people change. So the ANC still stands for good things, but it's the people that are different. So what changed? I guess the people. It comes down to that.
And so has there been a decline in terms of productivity and infrastructural development?
Massive decline, massive. In all sectors, all critical infrastructure. I think most of our municipal areas and our peri-urban areas and cities, basic infrastructure has collapsed to the point where a lot of it doesn't work anymore. And it's not an exaggeration to say that cities like Johannesburg and Pretoria are on the verge of having no water permanently. We can go 2 weeks without having water.
Why? Don't you have water? Don't you have reservoirs where you can pipe the water? Or
we do.
Yeah.
We have all of that. But the critical infrastructure has been allowed to deteriorate to the point where it doesn't work. And if you don't keep doing that preventative maintenance on this equipment, when you have to replace it, suddenly it is so expensive you almost can't afford it. And we're at that point now. The roads are really bad. The rail network has crumbled and it was the jewel of the continent, our rail network.
Yes.
It's appalling the state it's in now. Roads are bad, water, these are basic. Health, education. If you look at the stats on our primary and secondary schooling, Fritz, we're of the worst on the continent, which is a disgrace, quite frankly.
All right.
So everything has
so are you going to rebound? Do you have hope and do you have faith in the system?
I have hope, but what do they say? Hope is not a strategy.
Okay, all right.
Of course I have hope, but I don't know. We require some kind of real transformation, and it's hard to see how that's going to happen. Very hard to see.
Grant, you are the president of the Ghana-South Africa Business Chamber, and you live in Ghana. Can you tell me about the pilgrimage from South Africa, elsewhere, and now to Ghana?
Yes, I took the circuitous route because I left South Africa 2002, so 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Moved to the UK and spent 11 years there. Went back to university, did my MBA, did a few master's degrees, and worked there in a couple of nice roles. But I always had the yearning for Africa. Always felt that I loved my time in the UK, by the way. I didn't have a day there that I didn't enjoy it. It was a glorious adventure, quite frankly. But by the time I got to Ghana, just before, I really knew my future lay here. Not South Africa, and not because I didn't want to go back at all. I just felt I was looking for some kind of adventure. So I felt, well, South Africa, I've done that, come from there. There's nothing adventurous in going back home. And so it came about that it was...
Why did you choose Ghana?
Yeah. Luckily I chose Ghana, and I think I got it right. So it was quite good today. And I said, no, let's do Ghana. I had a couple of friends here. And, I think it's probably the best choice I've ever made in my life, Fritz.
That's good to hear.
So that was 13 years ago.
Right.
Came to Ghana, flew in and out for a year, assessing it, checking it out, going and seeing the various agencies that I had to understand what I needed to do to set up here, talk to people, etc. And so by the time I came with my suitcase and my laptop in 2013, set up, went and registered at the GIPC. That was it, the start of my Ghana journey and adventure.
How are you finding it so far?
When I say it's been the best time of my life, it really has been. Nostalgically, if I look back at the early 80s as a teenager, falling in love, going to parties, playing sport, that's not real, really. I mean, you live at home, you don't need to worry about anything. It's not, it's not real life. So I think in terms of my adult life, it's the minute I came here, I realized this is just such a wonderful place to live. And I knew that after the first few years where I saw business was going quite well, that I had some stability. There was no thought of ever having to say, well, I'll leave one day. And of course, my life as it's turned out now, I do have roots here. So the people, I just think the culture of the people, the gentleness of the people, it's been such a wonderful learning experience for me, Fritz. I think I've learned more about myself through Ghana and Ghanaians in these 13 years than my entire life before.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I mean, Ghanaians sometimes are self-deprecating. So I'd like to hear what the pluses are that makes us what we are.
Yeah, what a good question. I think if I sum it up, it's the gentleness of the Ghanaian people and culture. There's a gentleness to it. There's a kindness, which I haven't found in other places. In Europe, you don't get that. Everyone's too busy and too selfish. It's different. South Africa we're also bit like Nigerians perhaps, we're hustling, we're bustling. No one really cares about their neighbor. But here, I think there's a gentleness and a kindness which I didn't know existed. And it's impacted on my life and has definitely made me a better person. Pity I didn't find it sooner, but I found it at least, so yeah. I'm thankful.
So on that note, let's have some music. So what's the next one? Pardon? Winning Streak.
Jelly Roll, Winning Streak.
Jelly Roll, okay. Is that South African too?
No, that's Midwest American country.
Country music, okay.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Western, song chosen by my guest, Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa. He is the president of the Ghana South African Business Chamber. He lives in Ghana. He's been living here since 2013. He's been telling us about the years in South Africa. He's told us about the good and the bad, and now he's in Ghana. And he's telling us that Ghanaians are gentle people, and he's seen kindness here. Now, the hard tax. You came here and you wanted to set up a business. How easy was it for you to set up a business, and what were the challenges that you met?
When I look back, it was actually quite easy. The process, the legal process, the administrative process, it was actually quite straightforward. I did everything properly, paid my dues, did what I had to, and it felt like each step of the way was okay. I had no real frustrations at all. I found that very easy. So I was delighted with that. The cut and thrust of business is difficult anywhere in the world, and every place has got its own peculiarities. Ghana's no different. I think the hardest thing I found in Ghana is sort of the time things take to happen here. It's kind of in slow motion sometimes when you feel it could be a bit quicker. Decision making can be tedious compared with other countries on a relative basis. But no, I think the early days were fine. I think the economy was still okay. It was still on an upward trend. Ghana was still very much an investment destination for foreigners at that stage. So attracting foreign capital then was relatively easy for Ghana. And if you look back at the stats, that was probably the high watermark just around that period. It's been on a slippery slope since then. But no, the early days were good. It was sort of, everything was coming out of the ground then. So for me, it was quite good providing services to corporate Ghana.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the airport area, all the new modern gleaming towers today were not there then. There were just a couple. And so I was there at the early stage and was able to capitalize that on, you know, on the things I sold. So those were the go-go years. And I think as each year passed, it became more difficult. And I think we've been through quite a dark period the last 6-7 years. It was pretty bad. But, you know, I think there's dawn now, a new dawn. There's a bit of hope now. But without glossing over the 13-year journey I've had here, it's the opportunities in Ghana, or in Africa in general. There's still far more opportunities for young entrepreneurs here than anywhere in the world, quite frankly. So I encourage anyone who's not sure what they want to do, if you have a bit of adventurous spirit and you prepare to roll the dice, give it a shot. You know, what's the worst that happens? You fail. Not the end of the world. Right. So, no, I think I enjoyed the early days. Did it all myself, you know, and did everything myself, literally. And then over time, you know, I've built up a team that can do the heavy lifting for me. Yeah. So standing in the queue, paying my taxes at the end of the month at GRA, at SNIT, I did it. Writing out checks here and going and paying them there, I did it. Going and paying my prepaid meter at ECG, I did it. Luckily not anymore. Yeah. And now people come, you know, now that I'm president of the chamber, I have companies coming in and asking advice, and I tell them the things I did. They don't believe me. But because I did it in those days, I can actually help a lot. Even though it's far more modern now and things are digital mostly, the experience and the process is still kind of the same. So I think my early years here, formative years here in Ghana, I think help quite a lot now when I'm assisting new entrants. Helps a bit.
All right. You've been pretty upbeat about the situation in Ghana. You're the president of the Ghana South African Business Chamber. I just want you to tell us a little bit more about the organization and the members and what kind of advice you give to them and how you're expecting to grow the organization, because I'm sure that you, as a very adventurous and expansive character, would like your organization to be a powerful and a very impactful one.
Yes, we have to flourish. We need to be positive. We need to have purpose. And we need to contribute to society at large in Ghana. So we're in our 25th year this year. So we're celebrating our 25-year anniversary, which is a wonderful milestone in service of our community, which has expanded since I took over the presidency. I'll come back to that. We, in fact, last week celebrated our 25th by having a festival of fitness. We had a sports day just around the corner, and we had 150 people playing tennis, paddle, there was running, there was cycling, there was Pilates, yoga, you name it, we were there. And it was a real rainbow nations of people, 26 different nationalities.
Really?
Yes. Networking, sweating, moving their bodies around. And so the highlight of the day, and that's why I mention it, was, you'd want to see us growing and flourishing. I think the purpose that we're about today is something that I've deliberately focused on, and we were able to hand over a check, some money, and boxes and boxes of clothes and sports equipment to the Zanator Ajaman Rawlings Foundation.
All right.
We've honored to have her as our patron of the Rainbow Nations Challenge, which is our sort of social movement within the Chamber. So the Chamber has a very focused mandate, and that's to serve Ghanaian businesses trying to do business in South Africa or South Africans up here. But outside of that, our social movement is where we focus on networking with the international business community, and we use sport as our platform. So we have tennis.
How do you do that?
So we have a tennis tournament, we have various paddle tournaments, we have a monthly running club.
Tell us about paddle. Ghanaians, and I'm even confused when you talk about paddle.
Paddle tennis. It's a hybrid of squash and tennis.
All right.
Very, very popular. Even here in Ghana, in Accra, there are paddle courts popping up everywhere.
Really?
And it's very, very popular. It's easier to play than tennis. You don't need as much skill. And it's doubles all the time, so it's very social. So it's a lovely way to have an hour of fitness, running around with your buddies. So we play paddle, we have tennis, the running, we have our fitness classes once a month as well. So we have all of these different activities. It's networking. It's about sort of that Spartan philosophy, a healthy mind in a healthy body. I think more and more around the world, CEOs and leaders know that they've got to have their workforce being fit and healthy, whether it's physical fitness or mental health. And so we focused heavily on that. And I'm quite proud that in my presidency we've brought this to life. It was an experiment which could easily have failed, but it seems to have worked nicely, and we've gathered momentum. There's a head of steam. And it's all really about giving. So yes, we're out there getting fit, networking for the benefit of our own particular businesses and organizations. But we raise money, and we are looking at ways to support those less fortunate than us. So the sort of business with purpose thing is absolutely essential. And that was never part of our mandate ever. In fact, it still isn't as a chamber. Our constitution doesn't say we ought to do that. But I think that's something we know we simply have to do. We must have a conscience. And so working with the foundation in the Korli Kloti constituency, what I like about that is it's highly focused. So we're not trying to spread too wide. We're highly focused, and what we want to do, keep going, is to really make an impact which is lasting and has some sustainability to it. So I think working with Zanato Ajaman-Rawlings, she's a household name. I mean, she's a veteran now in Parliament. She's a three-term parliamentarian.
Yeah.
She's earned her stripes. She does great work in the community. I was with her 3 weeks ago. She was doing a health outreach at the Gar Manches Palace.
Yeah.
Free health screening, giving medicine out to sick people. It went on all day. There must have been 500 people from the community sitting, waiting. There were doctors and nurses doing all, from eye tests to you name it. So, but we're focusing on women in the markets. How do we assist them? How do we make their livelihoods better? Introducing things like solar lighting, cold chain to keep produce cold. As we know, half the stuff gets thrown away all the time. Comes at a great cost to society.
That's what I want to talk to you about. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you how the South African companies in Ghana are doing. Are they comfortable here, or there's room for improvement?
It's a dynamic situation. There's ebb and flow. So if you speak to MTN, you read in the newspaper every quarter profits are record profits.
Right.
The dividends they're paying to shareholders are record dividends.
Right.
The taxes they're paying to government are record taxes. So if you ask them, everything's great, couldn't be better. But I guess if you ask MultiChoice how things are going, they're being beaten with a big stick at the moment.
Right.
The CEO might have a different story to tell. ShopRite, which is one of South Africa's powerhouse retailers, it is such a good organization, are exiting here.
Why?
They're finding it tough to run a business so far away from home. It's tough. It's costly. It costs money to have a supply chain for a grocery store. The gold mines up to, the gold price is very high now. So some of them you'd probably say they're happy, but gold fields are exiting. So the banks are happy, although they've been through a very torrid 8 years. Stanbic is one of the biggest, highly profitable. Absa, which was formerly Barclays, highly profitable. First National Bank, although a latecomer and quite small, dynamic bank. Our insurance companies do well. So it depends who you ask. But by and large, they are leaders in their various sectors. Business might be tough sometimes and better at other times. And I think we've all come through a very difficult period of time. So the general feeling is it's been tough. But if you look at their performance, they perform well. And that shows the strength of the brand. It shows the strength of the leadership. Clearly, a deep balance sheet, so they can withstand these long, protracted periods of difficulty. But a lot of our South African firms are leaders in each sector and have transformed the sectors they're in, helped modernize, helped improve, helped raise standards. Meaningful job creation. So if you work in a bank, you work in an insurance company, you work at MTN, there's a very good chance you've been very well trained. There's a very good chance that your salary or your wages are higher than most.
Right.
And your ability to rise through the ranks is there. So I think on any of those scores, the South African firms do well. And I think as good corporate citizens, they've definitely led in each sector. Could it be better? For sure. But I do think there's a sense of optimism right now. I think we're almost a year into a new regime. All the signs are that the policies are sensible. Whether it's luck or skill, the CD is strengthened a lot, which helps bring down inflation, which has been such a pain for households and businesses.
That's right.
So everything seems to be going the way of this new regime. As I say, there's always some luck and timing there. That they can't claim it all through skill, but
Okay.
I'm sure they will. But no, I think at any one time you have a handful of companies flying, and then you have those that are really not doing well, and there are those that are exiting. So it's ebb and flow at all times.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is, I have a story to tell on ZFM 101.9. The program is I Have a Story to Tell. My name is Fritz Spafford. My guest is Grant Edwin Weber, who is the president of the Ghana South Africa Business Chamber. And he's telling us about his early days in South Africa, his journey through Britain, back and down to Ghana. And he's been telling us about some of the things they've achieved as a chamber. But one thing I want to ask you, which is very important. One of the pluses of South Africa is cheap food because of your agricultural output. And Ghana is struggling to come up with an effective system that will put cheap food on the table. We have to look at the actual growing of crops, food crops, their storage, their distribution, and all that. And you have the up on that. Is South Africa doing anything to help us achieve those indices so that we can have cheap food on the table and make things a little bit better for the average Ghanaian?
Good question. Up to now, South Africa's done very little to nothing to assist, sadly. I'll come back to that because it's about to change. But an MOU was signed in 2022 between the ministries of agriculture of the two countries for assistance, and mostly from South Africa here, for all the things you've mentioned. We have over 100 years of expertise in building the system. It works very well. And all or parts of it can be adapted and used here, and Ghana will be better off manyfold. Sadly, nothing's happened. But we're actively on it now, and we've taken that MOU, which is a dusty document, and we're now trying to operationalize it. And I think now there's agencies in South Africa that are assisting me to do practical things on the ground here. There are a couple of projects, so it's not just conceptual or workshops. It's actual doing things on the ground. A couple of nice projects will be announced quite soon, and especially further north than Accra, where I think job creation is absolutely essential, skills development, etc. But where things grow, and there's abundance, and the crops, they are high value crops actually, and could solve the food crisis, deficit in Ghana.
Yeah.
But quite a few of the high value crops could be exported actually, which could assist with building up a forex base here. So nothing really has been done, but this is going to change quickly. I think what does help is the government's policy now around agriculture and agribusiness.
Right.
And I think there's been a distinction made between agriculture and agribusiness.
Can you expand on that for me? What's the difference? Because you are somebody who is in the know about that. What's
Yes.
agribusiness and what's agriculture?
Well, I think very cleverly this government has changed the name of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and they've included agribusiness there. I think that's sensible, where they've made the point of putting it in the name and saying, if it's in the name, there needs to be a focus on it. I think hitherto it was really just under the Ministry of Agriculture, and I got lost in everything. You know, the value chain of agriculture is so deep and vast and different. You've mentioned 6 of the different areas, from warehousing, logistics, cold chain. We all think of farming just as, you know, the farmer planting seeds and then the crop grows and then they harvest it and then you go and buy it somewhere. But in between that, there's all of these things that need to happen. And because they don't happen well, everyone pays the cost for inefficiency, ineffectiveness, the wrong things. Everyone pays along the way. So we're all worse off. So it's high time that Africa grasps this nettle, quite frankly, not just Ghana, because everything grows here. So I think there's some sensible policies that I've read through in detail that we're working with as a framework. And I think give it a few years, I think you'll see some big change. Can it all be solved in 10 years? Probably not. But there should be the first green shoots of progress shown on things like post-harvest losses. They say it could be 50% of crops are lost through spoilage and waste.
Right.
That you know, that's dreadful. There should be more crops being done. There should be more value addition done, the manufacturing here in Ghana. And that is all now being enabled. So I think more and more we'll be seeing this happen. And definitely the South African institutions of various kinds will be leading the charge in that, yeah.
All right. So there is an avenue for technology and knowledge transfer from South Africa, so long as Ghanaians are willing to listen and learn, because we also have our egos and we think that we know. But I hope that we'll create that enabling environment for that to happen.
Yes, I'm practical, Fritz,
Right.
and you either do it or you don't do it. You either work in partnership or you don't. It's your free choice. You don't want the government too involved directly in these things. You want the enabling policy, which
Right.
I think we have. And then you want government to get out of the way and allow private sector to do their thing. I'm a firm believer in that. You don't want government involvement. It ends badly, always. It never ends well. So if the private sector are allowed to do their thing, they must find their place. And you either do it or you don't do it. And there will be those that want to do it, and they will be better off. There will be those that choose not to, and they'll miss the train.
All right. We're on ZFM 101.9. The program is I Have a Story to Tell. My guest is Grant Edwin Weber, who is the president of the Ghana South African Business Chamber. I'm your host. My name is Fritz Pafford, and we're going to take a music break. So what's the next song? What? Okay. Ain't No Love in Oklahoma. That's the
Zed.
selection. a story to tell. And my guest is Grant Edwin Weber. My name is Fritz Bafor. I'm your host. Grant, we're talking about the technology transfer, the inputs from South Africa and everything. Now I want to ask you a question. What about the other side? Ghanaians leaving to go, and what can Ghanaians do for South Africa from your point of view?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that Ghana can do culturally, commercially, in South Africa right now, and we would be better off. I mean, the obvious thing is exporting some products, which we do a little bit already, things like shea butter. So if you go into any of the pharmacy chains in South Africa or the supermarkets, either the health or the beauty products that have got shea in them, a lot of them, if you look on the country of origin, it's nice to see Ghana pop up. So I think we're seeing more and more of this, although it's way too low, quite frankly. It's also nice to see on the cocoa chocolate. I think the Ghanaian chocolate that I eat is better than anything I've had anywhere, quite frankly.
I agree.
Yeah, it's. I think that's what chocolate should taste like. So all they need to, I think what we have to do is just get our costs right, and that's volume, so that we can compete. You know, you still have to put it on a shelf next to the other cheap rubbish, and you have to find your competitive edge. So I think that's about producing enough of it, using the right technologies to get your cost of production right down to compete. So, you know, and other products which come out of these crops here. We've cashew nuts, some of the other nuts up from the northern region, if they are processed nicely, definitely can find their way onto the shelves in South Africa. That's for sure. Honey, as an example, I'm surprised there's not more honey being harvested and exported. Again, I think we'll see one of our members unveiling a project very soon around that. I think that's very exciting. But culturally, there's a lot from music point of view. I think there's so much that can be exported. I know we've had Lucky Dube. When I came here, before Uber was around, when I got here, I still had to wait for those horrible licorice all sort taxis. And the best thing about those things was at least Lucky Dube played in every single taxi. So he seemed to have been exported here. So
I was very instrumental in that, because I had a program on Ghanaian television, and Lucky Dube's record company gave me videos for my program. So I put them in as inserts for the program Sincerely Yours years back. And so, you know, it became popular. Then he came here once, and it was a hit. It was huge, yes.
Well, we have you to thank for that, Fritz. So well done. So, I mean, but, you know, the Ghanaian artists are excellent. So I know they have sellout tours all over the place now. So definitely in South Africa, I see something like that. But also the Ghanaian cloth, the kente, I think more and more the Ghanaian cloths are being used, whether it's for clothes or for furniture, for upholstery, cushion covers, that kind of thing. But again, I think it's too little. There should be way more of it, because it is so different. It is so beautiful. There's definitely a room for that. So encouraging more Ghanaian firms to try down south is definitely something we do. It's difficult for Ghanaian firms. If you had to go and set up in Johannesburg and compete with the South African firms, it's hard. You're going to get beaten up. But if you selling chocolate, if you're doing shea butter, if you've got the cloth, if you pick your weapons and pick your battles, Ghanaian firms will compete and do well. There's no doubt about it. But we need to be clever. We need to be sensible and see which battles we can win. But those 5 or 6 examples I've used are definite winners. There are more, though.
All right. Now, we've talked a lot about different things. You live in Ghana, and you have a Ghanaian, a very strong Ghanaian side to you. So I'm going to go into that. I know it's a little personal, but...
With pleasure.
So tell me about your Ghanaian side.
Yes. I said to you earlier, this is the happiest time of my life. And I think it coincides with having a beautiful Ghanaian wife and having a gorgeous Ghanaian daughter, 2.5 years old, she's listening to us now. She didn't want her daddy to leave home tonight to come with Uncle Fritz, but she'll be listening to me, and that makes everything worthwhile.
And where have you been in Ghana? I mean, you've lived in Ghana. I'm sure you've traveled around.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the places you've been and your impressions of those places you've been and the people
in Ghana.
Yes, in Ghana.
Yes, I love it. I don't enjoy the travel on the road so much.
Oh, right.
That's treacherous and painful.
That's right.
But when I get to the destination, for me, it's wonderful.
Where have you been?
I haven't explored as much as I ought to have. I have to confess that. But I've been to lots of places, but I have to say, if I pick my favorite, it would be around the Akosombo area. I love driving into the town, and there's the wall, and the turbines are there, and the river, and then when you go up and the dam is there, you can take a boat ride, go down the river. I've spent many, many nights and weekends up there, either in luxury in a hotel or taking my touring motorbike up, doing the dirt trails, doing the roads, and sleeping in fairly cheap accommodation, sharing my bed with a cockroach, which adds to the adventure. I tend to prefer inland more than the coastal area.
Right.
I think I've been spoiled having grown up in South Africa, because the coast is so beautiful in South Africa. It's hard for anything else anywhere in the world, quite frankly, to compete.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a geographical problem here. We don't have beaches because the continental shelf is just off the landmass.
Yes.
So therefore, we don't have, and along West Africa, where ours is terrible.
Yes.
So you see that most of our harbors are artificial harbors.
Yes.
Created, so that is a problem.
Yes, and that's easy to see. But going inland, I love whenever I go to Kumasi. I always like being in that city. I quite enjoy it. But then going further up north, I thoroughly enjoy it. I was in Tamale a couple of weeks ago. Loved it. It's still very green, and in fact, it drizzled a bit while I was there. So it gets dry quite quickly and brown.
Right.
But for now, it's green, and it's really just quite gorgeous. And I've spent more and more time in the Upper West region around Wa, and I'm going to be spending much more time up there with my business interests.
Yeah.
But that, for me, is fascinating, that part of the country, being in the top left-hand corner. You've got Cote d'Ivoire on the left, and then Burkina just above.
Yes.
So culturally, it's very different. The people are very different.
They're beautiful people.
Beautiful. And just the countryside. And again, it's still very green. But all the shade trees, from the air, when you're coming into land, you can see this preponderance of shade trees around. Quite beautiful. And then when I flew out of Tamale. When you go over the Volta, that vast body of water, it's just incredible. It's something to behold. You fly it seems forever over that water. It's quite something
Yeah,
to
until
behold.
recently, it was the biggest man-made lake in the world.
Yes.
So it shows you the extent of the water body.
Yes.
Yeah, Grant, so you live in Ghana, you're married to a Ghanaian, your daughter is Ghanaian because she was born here. What are your expectations about the future of Ghana? Are we going to make it, from your point of view? I'm putting you on the spot, but I'd like an answer.
It's up to us. So while I'm one of the us, I'm going to say yes, because I'll be pushing in that direction and encouraging everyone to do it. The jury's out. The whole world seems to be in a funny place now, quite frankly. Everything seems upside down. I'm not a geopolitical expert, so I'm not able to offer any real insights. But can Ghana make it? Yes, of course. Do we have all the necessary resources? We do. Lots of young, educated people, good people, people that want to work, people that have no work. And then we have things that need to be built. Things have to be done here. We need mega projects. We need infrastructure, from roads to telco, to railway lines, power. So much critical infrastructure needed. But we have the land, we have the people. Do we have the leadership? Hopefully. I mean, that time will tell. And I think it does come down to leadership always. But yes, while I'm in the mix, I'm going to say, if I can influence, for sure, I'm positive. I wouldn't be here if I didn't see any chance.
That's good to hear. Before we say goodbye, we'll have to play some music and then we'll round off. So, what's the last selection?
Johnny Cash.
Ah,
Gotta have Johnny Cash.
Yes, okay. You're a country and western man, I can see.
Zed 101.9 FM.
is I Have a Story to Tell. My guest has been Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa. He's the president of the Ghana South African Business Chamber. He's a businessman working in Ghana. He has a Ghanaian wife, a Ghanaian child. He enjoys this country. Before we wind up, I just want to touch on something that is disturbing a lot of Ghanaians, and that is galamsey, which is the poisoning of the earth. And I think that you've had that experience in South Africa. Are you doing anything to get South African help to assist us solve this problem? Because naturally you've had high incidence of that in South Africa.
Yes, our galamsey is different in South Africa. It's illegal, but it's deep underground mining. There's no water bodies that get poisoned. So it's illegal mining, yes. But the devastation on communities is quite different. I'm glad you brought this up. Probably of all the many problems in Ghana, this one is an existential threat.
Yeah.
I'm at my wit's end as to why everyone, not more people, everyone is not jumping up and down and actually demanding that real action be taken, not cosmetic change. There's too little being done by too few people, quite frankly.
Right.
It's a disgrace. This affects every single person today, and it affects our generations to come. It's an existential threat. It cannot be politicized, and it cannot be downplayed in any way.
Right.
Every single person is affected, today or the next generations. Something must be done immediately and wholesale.
I hope everybody out there is hearing what is being said here. It's a great concern of mine too, but that has not been the meatus of what we were doing here today. Today we've been talking to Grant Edwin Weber from South Africa. He's the president of the Ghana South African Business Chamber. He has born and bred in South Africa. He's lived in various parts of the world. He now lives in Ghana. And I can tell you that he wants to make Ghana his home, and he's just ended up on a very sad note. I hope that out there we do something about galamsey. We take it seriously, and we try to end this menace. Grant, it's been a wonderful thing talking to you today here on this program. I'm very honored and privileged that you've been able to come here and talk to us. We've learned a lot. We've seen another vista of Africa, and we hope that you'll come back sometime. And on behalf of the management of Zed, since you like a certain kind of music, we hope that very soon we'll have you as a guest presenter on one of our music shows. So I hope that you'll accept that.
I will do it with the greatest of pleasure. I'm not sure how many listeners I'll attract, but I'll be here if there's an invitation. And thank you so much for being with you tonight. I hope that my story has been a little bit interesting at least.
Super. Thank you very much. So this has been I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. We'll have another program, another guest, same time next week. God bless you all out there, and let's keep on keeping on.
You're tuned in to Zed 101.9